Donald Trump is back to doing rallies. On Saturday, Trump supporters gathered in Des Moines, Iowa to listen to the former twice-impeached president complain, and MSNBC decided to be there. So now reporter Gary Grumbach interviewed some of his supporters, including one woman who told him that a new civil war was coming. Here's that.
I think the Republicans are about as weak as they possibly could be in Congress. You have maybe 6 that are worth their salt. Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, and 2 or 3 others. The rest of them are just the same as the Democrats. They've been there too long. They're establishment. They don't care about the American people because they're in their elite little tower. And so we're just sick of it, you know, and we're not gonna take it anymore. I see a civil war coming. I do. I see civil war coming.
A civil war coming. That's what she said, and that's the sentiment that we're hearing from a number of people on the ground here at today's Trump rally.
All right, so now understand that that's disturbing. Like, literally talking about a civil war. She ain't the only one. So now, in her rant, she actually does talk about or touch on something that is true. Okay, so now the Republican establishment actually does sit in an ivory tower. They actually don't care about the American people. She's right about that. And it's the same with most Democrats, I would say, part of the Democratic Party. And so, it's not necessarily just because they're bad people, although you could certainly say that there are some bad people out there, members of both parties. I can think of Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and think of a lot of Republicans, more than we can name. But in reality, the real issue here is the system. Okay, and that enables these bad people to be in positions of power. And so big corporations, they buy our congressmen to serve them and not us. They think they need that money for re-election, which of course ends up in the pockets of the media, political consultants, and that gets used for ads. And so in reality, it's the system that's broken. It's the system that's dividing us. And so in reality, of course, when you look, she's fighting the wrong enemy. And that's the thing. The real problem here is greed. The real problem here is money in politics. The real problem here is corruption. And so understand, I get that frustration. I do. That frustration, which is a very, very real frustration felt by a lot of Americans. Unfortunately, this has been weaponized by the right wing. They have a lot of the money. They have a lot of the reach. They have a lot of the messaging. And so they have a massive media complex, and they have used that instead of directing the blame at the system, instead of directing the blame at wealthy corporations, etc. They instead use immigrants as scapegoats, gay people, Democrats, abortions, etc. But we know that the owner donors are really running the show, and they're running us all into the ground in the name of corporate profits. So now the only people that I do see fighting against that on the national level are a few Democrats, a few progressives. There are some conservatives, at least at the state level, that do see the problem with money in politics and want to remove it as well. And of course, there's a lot of voters out there that think, yeah, the problem is corruption. Unfortunately, those voters don't tend to be in places of power. And so, as I said, most of the rest of the Republican Party entirely corrupted by big business, and the rest, unfortunately, are conspiracy theorists that are in power. And some of them are, of course, both. Let's look at Ted Cruz for a second, right? Ted Cruz is deeply slimy. Ted Cruz took money from Goldman Sachs, the oil and gas industry, and is about as fake as you could be. While his state froze, this guy ran to Cancun. So, and during the 2016 primary, remember when Ted Cruz was talking tough? He was, I'm never going to support Trump, never going to support people like that. Well, he talked tough until his Mercers, his owner donors, called up, and then suddenly he was phone banking for a man that calls his wife ugly. That's what happened. And so he doesn't care about the American people. Neither does Donald Trump. They are serving the donors and themselves as well. And so I understand, okay, you're thinking, why are you validating something that she says? She's obviously crazy because she's saying that there's going to be a civil war. But that's the rhetoric that's going on in the right wing right now, okay? And there are parts of her grievances that do make sense. The fact that you do have this system that only favors the rich and corporations over actual human beings. And this is why we can't have, healthcare for every single person. But the fact that it's incredibly popular. That's why we don't have higher wages for regular working people. That's why we don't have things like sick leave, etc. That all these things that are incredibly popular with both Democrats and Republicans, people across and independents across all the political spectrum, these are things that we can't have because of the money and because of our system. And so we have that. But now, again, those are valid, but the idea of civil war is not valid. I think it's insane. And of course, the reason that they bring this up is they think that they're literally in a cult. They've been brainwashed into a cult. About 6 in 10 Republicans think believing in Donald Trump's big lie is important to their identity as a conservative. And nearly half of them think that American patriots may have to resort to violence in order to save the United States. Save the United States. From who? Who are they saving it from? 23% of Republicans say that America's been taken over by a cabal of devil-worshipping pedophiles who literally eat children. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. 28% of Republicans think that there's a storm coming that will go and remove those people and install the right leaders. The right leaders. This is not something that is insignificant. This is not a belief that is insignificant. If you're in this cult, like she is, you literally believe that you are out there fighting Satan. And so, of course, for you, civil war, oh yeah, well, I'm on the side that's fighting Satan. The number of QAnon followers who committed ideologically motivated crimes in the US stands at least 79, 40 of whom were at the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. So now, the other thing is, they talk about civil war, right? Civil war, civil war, civil war. Tim Pool talks about it constantly in his show. I think there's a civil war coming. But understand that what that actually looks like, it's not going to be North versus South, the Mason-Dixon line, and the generals going down to Richmond. No, that's not going to be it. What it's going to end up being, if something like this happens, is a handful of extremists doing increasing numbers of stochastic terrorist attacks. Things like attacking synagogues, attacking gay and trans people, blowing up abortion clinics. And these are things that have already been happening. What will likely, if these people are super serious and continue to be egged on and pushed into the cult of Trump, will continue to do these in increasing numbers. And of course, it's not just people on the ground too. It's members of Congress that will strip voting rights, which they're already doing. They'll take control that way. And they'll use, the threats of stochastic terrorism to scare the vast majority of the rest of us into accepting what is essentially, minority conservative rule, their status quo. That is a dangerous situation. And so, obviously, we have to fight back. Now, first, of course, we fight back by actually knowing what's going on and knowing how exactly they're going to try to do this. The other part, of course, is to use means, legal means, peaceful means, etc., to fight back against it, to prevent those people from getting into power, from using all the resources that we have available as citizens to be able to fight back against that and use the electoral power to prevent that from happening. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.